All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Brasília.
Okay.
Brasília. Brazil, the capital city.
Yes.
Built from scratch in the 1950s.
That's right.
As this kind of like a shining example of modernism.
A planned city.
Yeah, like a planned city.
Yeah.
But also, we're going to kind of explore how it's a paradox.
Interesting.
Because, it was meticulously planned.
Right.
But it also, the article that we're looking at, Brasília's Invisible Paths, where modernism meets reality, kind of gets into how the city is also flawed.
In some pretty fundamental ways.
Yeah. And so we're going to kind of unpack that today, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll look at cities in a whole new way.
I think you will.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Brasília is this clash that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
This tension between the vision of its creators and then how it actually turned out.
Yeah, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
For, I guess, just to set the stage, Brasília, the city of ambition. How did it all begin?
Okay, so picture this. 1957, Brazil.
Right.
They have this national competition to design the new capital.
Okay.
And this architect, Lucio Costa,
Okay.
he enters with, this incredibly audacious plan, and he wins with only 15 sketches and 23 paragraphs.
15 sketches.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's like showing up to a job interview with a napkin drawing.
Yeah, and being like, hire me.
And being like, I'm gonna run this company.
Yeah, this is the plan.
Yeah, amazing.
So what was this napkin drawing?
So basically, his design was rooted in this idea of urbanism as a monument.
Okay.
So he wanted to create a capital that just embodied progress, ambition for the country.
And so to actually build this out,
Yeah.
who did he bring in to actually design it?
So he brought in Oscar Niemeyer, who was his former assistant and was already this globally renowned architect.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then Roberto Burle Marx, the landscape architect, to design these amazing gardens.
Wow, so a real all-star team?
Yeah, and they created this modernist marvel, a city unlike any other at the time.
So it opens, I imagine, to rave reviews.
Yeah, the world was pretty much awestruck, I think.
Yeah, so it sounds like an instant success story.
At first glance, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the article points to some problems.
Albums already.
Yeah, there were these cracks in the facade right from the very start.
Cracks. So early on.
Yeah, and I think this kind of speaks to that disconnect
Interesting.
between the design and, reality.
Okay, so what went wrong?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here when we say cracks?
So as Brasília is being built,
Okay.
critics start to voice concerns.
Okay.
Basically saying that the city's just monumental scale.
Right.
The vast open spaces.
Yeah.
The prioritization of cars.
Okay.
They felt it clashed with actual modern urban ideals.
Wait, so it was supposed to be this futuristic city, but some people thought it was actually a step backwards.
Yeah. In terms of urban design.
What were they seeing that made them say that?
Okay, so if you think about it, traditional Brazilian cities are known for their vibrant street life,
Yeah.
they're walkable.
Right.
Brasília, though, was very much designed around the automobile.
The car.
The car. Yeah, and so this architect, Brian Carter, had this really great quote. I think it sums it up.
Yeah.
He said, "It relates more to classicism or Baroque than the egalitarian aspirations of modernism."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Then you have another architect, Kobe Karp,
Okay.
who basically argued that the city's aim to create a high quality of life for its residents kind of backfired.
Oh, so because of the lack of walkability.
I think that was a big part of it, yeah.
That's a pretty harsh indictment of
Yeah.
Costa's vision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he anticipated this?
It's hard to say,
Yeah.
but this disconnect between the design and reality had very real consequences.
Okay, so what happened?
So Brasília's population grew way more than they ever expected,
Right.
and unplanned satellite towns started popping up on the outskirts.
So they ran out of room in the original plan.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, and I thought Brasília was supposed to be this egalitarian city.
Exactly, that was the idea.
Right.
But these satellite towns ended up being where the working class had to go.
So a class divide formed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the pilot plan, the original city with its modernist buildings, wide avenues housed mostly affluent residents and politicians.
Wow, so a very different reality.
Yeah.
what was intended.
Not what was intended.
And I know the architect Jan Gehl called this the subversion of modernist logic.
It really is.
It is.
The design meant to unite people ended up kind of segregating them.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is where those desire lines come in.
Desire lines, these paths that pedestrians carve out, almost like a rebellion against a city designed for cars.
Right.
Like, what do those even look like?
Yeah, are we talking like dirt paths or something else? So think of them as like shortcuts. These informal routes that just emerge organically,
Okay.
often out of necessity. You know,
Yeah.
they can be dirt paths, worn patches of grass. You know, sometimes people are cutting across busy roads.
Wow, so they're literally like making their own paths
Yeah.
just to get around?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's why, that's like, I mean, that's really like a statement.
It is. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And, you know, our article mentions this photographer, Diego Bresani.
Yeah?
He spent like a decade documenting these desire lines.
The technique.
Yeah, he was really drawn to them.
Wow, you must have some stories.
He does. He actually sold his car in 2013 and became a pedestrian himself.
Wow, so he like fully committed?
Yeah, he wanted to experience the city like on foot.
Yeah.
And that's when he really started to notice these invisible paths, these routes that you would never see from a car,
Right.
but that are essential for pedestrians.
So it's like a whole hidden world within the city.
It is. It's really quite remarkable. And I think Brasani's work, it really kind of exposes this flaw in top-down urban planning. Yeah.
When architects design a city like solely on aesthetics or grand visions, they often miss the practical needs of the people who actually live there.
Right, the people on the ground.
Exactly. And Brasani himself noted that it wasn't the residents of the pilot plan, the ones who could afford cars, who were creating these desire lines.
Right.
It was the working class, the people commuting from the outskirts.
Yeah, makes sense.
They were the ones walking these long distances, navigating a city that really just wasn't built with them in mind.
That's sad in a way.
It is. It's a bit heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, the people who were supposed to benefit the most from this grand design are the ones being failed by it.
Right, the irony.
It's a real paradox.
Yeah, do you think Costa and his team ever, like, walked the city?
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think what we see in Brasilia is that even when sidewalks do exist, they often prioritize the look over the function.
Interesting.
Brasani's photos actually capture this really well.
Okay.
You'll see these elegant, sweeping sidewalks that look beautiful from above,
Yeah.
but they might be too narrow or lead nowhere useful or force people to take these really roundabout routes.
Wow.
So people choose the grass, the dirt paths, the shortcuts, because it's just faster and more efficient.
It's like a silent protest.
It is. It's like people literally voting with their feet
Yeah,
against a design that doesn't serve them.
I like that, voting with their feet.
Yeah, and I think it raises this question. How do we actually design cities that work for people?
Yeah, a big question.
It is a big question,
Oh.
because if a city as meticulously planned as Brasilia can end up with these desire lines,
Yeah.
what does that say about urban planning in general?
Right, like are we just too focused on, you know, the big picture?
For grand vision.
Yeah, the grand vision, without considering what it's actually going to be like to live in the space.
Yeah, and the needs of the people who'll be using it.
What can we learn from Brasilia's mistakes?
It's a really good question, and I think, you know, in a way, Brasilia's story is kind of a cautionary tale.
It's a reminder that we have to keep reevaluating our cities. You know, looking for ways to make them more human-centered.
More livable.
Yeah, more livable, more adaptable to the needs of the people who live there.
So it's not just about like tearing everything down and starting over.
No, not at all.
We can learn from these desire lines
Exactly.
and like evolve our cities.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think Brasilia's story is like a call to action,
Okay.
to be more flexible in our designs,
Okay.
understand that a city isn't static,
Right.
it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's dynamic.
It's dynamic, yeah, and that means being open to change, adapting to new patterns of movement, and incorporating feedback from the people who actually use these spaces.
It's like those desire lines are a form of feedback in themselves. It's like,
yeah.
hey, this isn't working.
Right, exactly. This is how I'm actually using the city.
This is my desire line.
Exactly. And, you know, who knows a city better than the people who walk its streets every day?
Yeah, the people who live there.
Right. And those desire lines, they represent a kind of collective intelligence, right?
Right.
It's like people figuring out the most efficient and enjoyable ways to navigate their environment.
So it's like they're crowdsourcing a better urban design.
Exactly.
So how do we take that concept and put it into action?
I think a good place to start is walkability.
Okay.
Creating spaces where people feel safe and comfortable walking, where things are within walking distance, and where the journey itself is enjoyable.
So it's like shifting away from car-centric design.
I think so.
Okay.
It's about looking at the city from the pedestrian's perspective.
And I mean, this applies to any city, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just Brasilia.
Right. It's a global issue.
Okay.
It's about shifting our mindset and understanding that a city that's good for pedestrians is good for everyone.
Yeah, it makes it more sustainable.
Yeah, more vibrant, more connected.
But like Brasilia, with its sprawling layout and monumental scale,
Yeah.
can a city like that really transform itself?
You know, it's definitely a challenge,
Yeah.
but I'm optimistic.
Okay.
I think the people of Brasilia are incredibly resourceful.
Yeah, they've already shown that with the desire lines.
Right, exactly. They're not afraid to challenge the status quo to find creative solutions.
So maybe those desire lines, those informal paths, can point the way forward.
I think that's a really beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, it's like a little bit poetic.
Yeah, it's a reminder that sometimes the most innovative solutions come from the bottom up,
From the people.
from the people,
Awesome.
people who are actually experiencing the city every single day.
Yeah, so what started as a deep dive into Brasilia has actually become a much bigger conversation
It has.
about the way we design and experience our cities.
Yeah, it's about understanding that urban planning isn't just about aesthetics or grand visions.
It's about people
It's about people.
and how they live in these spaces.
Exactly, and it's an ongoing process. Cities are constantly evolving,
Right.
and our approach to urban design should evolve too.
Yeah, we need to be adaptable.
We have to be responsive and always willing to learn from the people who actually use these spaces every day.
Okay, so that's our deep dive on Brasilia today.
I hope it was interesting.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
I hope it makes people think a little differently about their own cities.
Yeah, and, you know, the spaces that they inhabit.
And the paths that they take.
Yeah, look for those desire lines
Keep exploring.
and what they might tell you about your city.
Until next time.